Awesome. Thank you, Jess. Welcome, everybody. I hope at least some of you are in your pajamas having a glass of wine, as Jess and I can't be doing that. So I hope you're all enjoying a relaxing evening. If I haven't met you, if you haven't heard of ySafe, my name is Yasmin London. I'm one of the directors of the organisation. So ySafe pretty much just teach young people, parents and their carers and staff at schools how to have positive relationships with technology. So we have a really pro technology ethos. We think that it's really fantastic, especially when you have the skills and knowledge to make good choices around it. And so tonight I will just share my screen here. One second. We're here obviously to talk about screen time recommendations during isolation. Now, this is like a bit of a hot potato. So, I'll go through some strategies that are hopefully going to be really helpful for you. But the key, as you'll see as I go through this presentation, is that it is about flexibility and not being too hard on yourself. So the agenda for this evening is just talking a little bit about whether screen time is good or bad, and explaining, where it's positive and where it maybe isn't so much. How you can manage attention and focus for your children if you're homeschooling and trying to do the juggle as well between your own work and managing your children. Again, as I mentioned, some strategies. And then I'm going to throw to Jess to talk about how Family Zone can help you. They are a fantastic organisation, and the software does so much, but particularly around that screen time component, it can certainly be really, really helpful for parents. So I'll let Jess explain that in a little bit more detail, and we'll kick it off here. So as I mentioned before, we are living in, and I hate to say the word, unprecedented times. How many times have you heard that in the last couple of weeks? But I've got to say it, got to throw it in there. But it really is. And in these times, we've just got to embrace a shifting family dynamic. What works for us one day is maybe not going to work for us the next day. And one day, with what's going on with work for you, you might allow a bit more screen time and balance it out the next day. So flexibility really is key. But where it does help you is when you have a little bit of knowledge so that you can make informed choices as you go along each day. So, is screen time bad? Absolutely not. There's some really, really fantastic positive attributes to spending time in front of screens and on technology. There's also obviously negative ones here where, you may have experienced it yourself. You have your attention hijacked, you get I suppose, suck down that sort of rabbit hole, that bottomless vortex of stuff by the design of persuasive technology, which I'll talk a little bit about as we go through. It obviously can have an impact on your physical health, for children, their language development and their social skills too. So, I think we're aware of those. But I did want to talk a little bit about the positive attributes because, I think that it can be a little bit sensationalized. In the media, we see the word screen time, there's usually a negative news heading attached to it. So bear in mind that there's so many good things that screen time can bring. It just depends on the quality of the time that your child is spending in front of the screen rather than the quantity of time. We get a lot of parents that sort of ask us, what's the exact amount of hours a day that's healthy and unhealthy for our child? And, the good answer and the bad answer is that there is no definitive answer. If we're looking at what, I suppose, the gold standard health organizations recommend, so we look to the World Health Organization or the American Academy of Pediatrics, they will say that generally for a child between 2 and 10, anything up to an hour a day of quality screen time has actually been seen to be beneficial for kids. So quality screen time is where they're engaged in an activity, where they're learning something, where there's two-way communication. For a child that is 10 years and over, that recommendation is that, again, that 1 hour time can actually be beneficial, but once it gets towards that 2 hour time limit, consecutive time limit, it can be detrimental where children are showing sort of I suppose, anxiety and isolation characteristics from the time that they're spending online. So if you think about, what you might have seen going across social media at the moment, we're definitely seeing a trend on something like TikTok, for example, with lots of families jumping in and learning choreography together. Like, that's a really creative way to use technology, and that's positive screen time if the child is with their caregivers or their parents and they're doing a bonding activity. Where it tips into the negative is if that child, for example, or that teenager, was to jump on and just mindlessly scroll and continue to check to see how many likes or how much engagement that video has got. That's where it tips into, a little bit more negative in terms of that screen time aspect. The other thing that is good is if there is more than one person watching one screen. So if you are sitting with your child, looking at something, reading something, listening to a podcast where you get that opportunity to engage with them, that can be really positive screen time too. So just bear in mind, screen time is not all created equal, and really do focus on the quality of that interaction versus the quantity. So now that we know a little bit about that, I wanted to talk really quickly about ways that social media platforms and games use to keep us engaged. This is that persuasive technology piece where I guess software has been designed to capture human attention. So some ideas are here for you to have a look at. So that infinite scrolling, removing that natural endpoint in a feed, for example, means that, as human beings, it's really hard for us to stop ourselves. And as kids, it's even harder. They don't have that impulse control, really set down until they're much older, in their early 20s. So by removing a natural endpoint, it means that we just spend more and more time looking through feeds and playing games. Push notifications is another one. It replicates that human interaction. So it makes us feel like that notification, that like, that comment requires our attention, and really taps into that connection piece for us as human beings. There is the social validation as well. So we compare ourselves to other people. We follow people who are inspirational, but at times it can tip over into that comparison syndrome. So we just need to be really wary of that. The last one there is time limitations. So if you think to Instagram or Snapchat that have those 24-hour time limitations on stories, or short videos, it causes us to feel that we might be missing out, and that anxiety that can sometimes creep in causes us to jump on more regularly. So those are some of the key ways that they do keep us engaged. Now, in terms of managing a homeschool environment, I just wanted to talk about some key strategies here, now knowing a little bit about screen time and how, social media and games maybe can impact that homeschooling environment. I wanted to give you some suggestions that might be helpful. So the first thing is to schedule the day. Now, kids really do thrive off routine. So making sure that they have a set start time, a set finish time, that, they know what to expect for the day, can be incredibly helpful in setting them up the right way. Make sure that you keep any personal devices away from them as much as you can during learning time. So a lot of research has shown that even a device, whether it be face up or face down, if that is within sight, that causes that person, whether it's a child or an adult, to be distracted because they're purely thinking about not picking up the phone. So try to make sure that that phone is put in another room or out of sight so that your child can concentrate on what they need to concentrate on. Make sure that you schedule some social time as well. So just like you definitely need your virtual wine time with your girlfriends or a beer with your mates, make sure that you understand that it's really important for kids to still be connecting with their friends, and make sure that you schedule that time. There's two reasons for that. One is that they won't ask you all day, I want to speak to someone, when can I get on social media? I don't want to do work anymore. And the other is so that when they get on, they can spend, a decent amount of time filling their bucket of entertainment, if you would. If you were to give them a phone and they might say to you, oh, Mum, Dad, I just want 5 minutes. Unfortunately, that 5 minutes is never 5 minutes, because once they jump onto whatever their platform of choice is, all that content has been curated perfectly for them. The same would happen for you. If you jump on, you know, I suppose you'd have to ask the question, how often? For you, is it ever just 5 minutes? It's not, because it's designed that way. It's designed to capture your attention and show you the stuff that you want to see. So you spend much more time on that than you think you do. Schedule entertainment as well. So this sort of connects in with that social media time. A really good time of the day to schedule entertainment is generally around that 2 to 3 p.m. mark in the day. Most of the time, you know, our productivity is at its low point around that time, and that break time is a really, really good time for kids once they've done their hard tasks in the morning and want a little bit of entertainment relief in the afternoon. Limiting learning to one device, it is really to reduce that cognitive overload and that overstimulation. So rather than having, you know, 2 screens or a screen and a phone, encourage your child, if they're old enough, to start writing notes. A lot of research has shown that that helps with memory retention, and reducing multiple screens really does reduce that eye strain and that fatigue that comes in for everybody as well. I'm going to talk about gaming in a little bit more detail in a couple of slides, but I do suggest that you limit gaming if that is your child's entertainment of choice during the day, mainly because it does create hyperstimulation in ways that other social media streaming or viewing doesn't. So because it's much more interactive, there's a lot more going on, it can be much harder for kids to switch off than it is for, you know, say watching a YouTube video or something along those lines. So try your best to limit gaming during the day. Some other things to consider when setting a home learning schedule. The first thing is to set the more difficult tasks in the morning where kids have a greater cognitive capacity, you know, where they're fresh and ready to learn. So, you know, even if the school schedule doesn't necessarily, if you say to do, you know, the hard stuff early, if you have that flexibility and if you have that choice, it'd be a really good thing to do to get the tough stuff out of the way first. I've mentioned this before, but it is all about routine. Our brain really likes to make associations with things. So when you have a child that puts their school uniform on to start their day, and they go and sit in a location that is a designated work zone, and they start and they finish at the same time, that tells their brain that they are in school mode. You know, obviously everybody's situation is different depending on the dynamics of the home environment and the space that you have, but try your best to make sure that they do have some kind of designated work zone. You know, that's certainly not their bedroom. If you can do that, I know that that's not always possible, but if you can, because, you know, a bedroom for most kids, aside from a safety aspect of being online, is a relaxation zone for a lot of kids too. And so when they're in that bedroom, their brain is sort of saying, look, I'm here to relax, rather than to focus on what they need to do. I mentioned this before, but that 2 to 3 p.m. in the afternoon is the time of least productivity. So just bear that in mind. It is around the end of school anyway. So if you can schedule that entertainment time or that time where they can connect with their friends, that's a really, really positive way to end the day as well. Okay, so gaming. You do need to choose your timing wisely. As I mentioned before, it does stimulate kids in a way that social media and, you know, watching YouTube videos doesn't. They often work in team environments. Their attention is captured, and that's very, very intense for them. So make sure that you choose gaming if your child does want to play a game at the end of the day. You know, I'm going to show you a video in a minute of just how exciting games can be. And if you watch that video, you know, trying to get a child to jump onto their algebra work for the day is absolutely mission impossible. So just be really strategic in the way that you get those games integrated into their day. Certainly don't let them do it early in the morning. You know, that'll set them up for, I guess, a little bit of a downer day, because they'll just want to keep going back to the game and wanting to go back to hanging with their friends. So end of the day is good, beginning of the day, not so good. So this is the video. I'll show it to you. It's about 46 seconds, and we'll have a chat about it afterwards.
I'm a living legend. You ain't heard yet, you not get the message. From the moment that I'm stepping in the
approaching drop zone.
turn to a bass when I'm rapping. I'm a living legend. You ain't heard yet, you not get the message. From the moment that I'm stepping in, I get a couple weapons, yeah, turn to a bass when I'm rapping.
Ready up.
It's my time, all time, on my way to become an icon.
Good luck, brother.
Get to the level that I'm on. I am the greatest of all time, man, and I'm gonna stop until the whole world's up in my hand. I can't see my rise up on the horizon.
Get ready.
Oops. So, who wants to do the maths homework or the maths work? Certainly not me. Every time I watch that video, I'm like, yes, I want to get involved in it. And, you know, I'm an adult and I don't even have any friends on that game or anything like that that could be drawing me in. So, you know, you watch something like that, you understand why they're not going to want to get off, or why they're going to say to you, just 5 more minutes, you know, just let me save this level, even though FYI, everything generally auto saves as well. Now, I wanted to talk about gaming and gaming consoles and their location. Gaming, obviously, as we talked about, at the end of the day is a good idea. You know, it's great for them to spend that time with their friends to sort of finish off the day. But it's important as well to time it appropriately so that it is not too close to when they're going to sleep. Because of that hyperstimulation, it takes a longer time for kids to reach a state of homeostasis where they're able to fall asleep and actually have good quality sleep. So the American Academy of Pediatrics and WHO recommend no more than 2 hours of gaming per day, and not any less than 1 hour before bedtime. So get them to have that switch off time, get them to slow down and have some time before they go to bed, and try to actually get good quality sleep. So we've got to allow them to catch up with themselves. Some sleep impacts that we know that about 70% of secondary students are not getting adequate sleep. There's a range of reasons for this, but technology is certainly a player in this statistic. So making sure that we have gaming consoles out of bedrooms where I suppose the temptation is not there. We have kids, as they get a little bit older, their circadian rhythms change. They naturally want to go to bed a little bit later. And if they're lying in their bedroom and there's a gaming console there, you know, we're setting them up to fail, because they're going to want to jump on. And when they jump on, they get sucked into a game like Apex Legends or something equally exciting. And suddenly it's 2 o'clock in the morning and they're really tired, and then they're hyperstimulated and they can't go to sleep. So make sure that there are no gaming consoles in their bedrooms. The other reason for that is that we have a lot of online predators that do approach and target children through games. So we don't want kids to have unfettered access and unsupervised access to games without adult supervision, where they might end up speaking to a stranger or somebody who might not do the right thing by them. So really important that we have that conversation with them about why gaming consoles should not be in bedrooms. Another impact on sleep that technology has is blue light. So you might have heard of the blue light phenomenon that has been happening for people. Basically what it does is it's a light that is emitted from a technological device that suppresses the melatonin in the brain, which means that you struggle to fall asleep because of that. And what we know is that the smaller the device, the more intense the blue light. So if you can imagine for a second, what you might do of a night, you might lie on your bed with your mobile phone, a very small device compared to a television, for example, and you hold it in really close proximity to your face. So that is probably the worst case scenario for absorbing blue light and how that might impact you. So certainly that's going to impact kids as well. So reiterating what I said about gaming consoles, the same definitely goes for any personal device like a phone or an iPad. We don't want them connecting with people or being sucked into conversations or games on their phones throughout the night. 1, for the blue light aspect, 2, for the engagement and hyperstimulation aspect, and 3, because of the conversations and things that might happen throughout the night where they're being unsupervised. We know that excessive checking as well can cause anxiety and, result in a difficulty in switching off too at nighttime. And then when we do have all of these overarching sleep impacts, the negative impacts are great. We can have impaired memory, emotional dysregulation. For kids, their grades will go down. So we really want to safeguard sleep as much as we can as parents. So what are the red flags? If you have a child that really, really loves gaming or really loves their technology, at one time or another, you might have thought, is my child addicted? Have they got a problem? Generally, most of the time, if the word addiction is thrown around a lot, and it's certainly not something that is diagnosed, immediately. If your child is, unable to be apart from their phone, I'll go through a couple of these on the list. If they're absolutely unable to be apart from their phone, if they're withdrawing from normal relationships, if they lose interest in real life relationships and all they want to do is sit on a game and connect with people, if their hygiene is starting to decline, those are things to really pay attention to. And first stop would be to take them to your GP to have an assessment and go from there. But don't be too alarmed by, media articles and headlines. A great story is a great story and it gets a lot of traction, but, in internet addiction and gaming addiction isn't as easily diagnosed in that way. So, your child just might really, really like the game or really like the social media platform. And unfortunately, our job as parents is to put boundaries in place for them. So allowing them to play a bit, but, maintaining control. So some things that you can do, which are quite helpful, is helping them, I guess, become aware of their own experiences of screen time. So getting them to understand how to be mindful of the content that they consume and understand that it's okay to chop and change a bit. So if you have a daughter that loves Instagram and she follows a whole range of different people, and when she's on Instagram she feels down about herself or she compares herself to other people, make sure that she knows and talk to her a bit about unfollowing people for a period of time or being really proactive in curating your feeds. We've got to really safeguard whose content we consume and allow to influence our thoughts. So asking them questions around that can be really, really helpful. Having micro conversations too regularly. So making sure that cyber safety is, a talking point in your home, that screen time is a talking point in your home. And, your kids are going to run a mile if you go and sit them down for the talk for a good, 45 minutes to an hour. And it's not necessary. Just raise issues and items in conversation at the dinner table, for example. So if you ask them about their day, include how was, Fortnite? How was Instagram today? Who's posting stuff? What are they posting? How does it make you feel? What would you do if that was you? If there was a negative comment, for example, test their temperature to see what they would do and if they know how to report things that are inappropriate or illegal. All of those sorts of questions are really important, and they don't all have to come at once, but those micro conversations are really helpful. Showing your support and interest is another way to definitely open that communication and conversation. We know from a lot of kids and a lot of research that they often won't talk to their parents about issues that they are experiencing online, mainly because they feel like if there's an issue, a parent's going to react by taking something away and they're going to perceive that as a punishment. So make sure you show them that you understand why technology is really important to them, particularly now, why they need to connect with their friends and encouraging that behavior rather than trying to restrict too heavily because they're going to push back on that. Get them to understand what red flags are. So you could get them to write a list with you and put them up somewhere visible in the house. So, it might be next to the computer, it might be on the fridge, just so that they can regularly check in with themselves. They might only read one on the checklist, but that question might be, You know, how does my body feel when I go through my Instagram feed? You know, does my breathing increase? Does my heart rate increase? And get them to understand that kind of mind-body connection. Get them to be really critical about the content that they're consuming, and whether it is, you know, fake news, whether it is skewed news. Critical analysis is really, really important. So making sure that they understand a little bit about that, and keeping that in regular conversation can be really beneficial for families. So just to go over this again, just in terms of what those screen time recommendations are and an overview, set a schedule. So be really proactive if you can. I know that that takes planning, and that's not always possible, and that's totally okay. But where you can, set that schedule, entertain them, you know, at the times that work for the family and work for the schedule, and make sure they understand why. 1 to 2 hours is ideal. So that is entertainment. That's not including their time that they have to be online for school, for example. That is for entertainment. Remember that quality dictates quantity. So, you know, another example where a really, really good quality screen time is if you imagine a 10-year-old boy, and one day that 10-year-old boy, you know, watches 30 minutes of a really violent video game, for example, on his own without anybody there to talk him through things. That's not a great example of screen time. But then the next day, that same boy watches a YouTube tutorial with his older brother about how to make a skateboard. That's really good quality screen time. He's got someone with him, someone engaging with him. It's appropriate content, and he's learning a new skill. So try really hard to think of things like that if you can. I know at the moment, particularly for some older students, they're getting really into Canva because they're getting into graphic design and they're creative. So Canva is a really good opportunity for kids at the appropriate age to get in and just have a little bit of a play with some designs. They might want to create something that they use for school. So lots of different things there that can be very, very helpful. And that last one there is that device-free bedroom. This is really important. So getting devices out of the bedrooms, getting gaming consoles out of the bedrooms to make sure that they get a good night's sleep, and that, you know, if they are online, it's under your eyes, under your control. And I'm sure Jess will be talking a little bit more about that when she speaks about what Family Zone can offer. If anybody does have any questions at all, these are our details. Really happy to answer any questions that you have. I know that we'll go through some on the chat tonight, but please take a screenshot, take a photo, get in touch with us if we can help you. We definitely will. I will throw over to Jess now. So I will stop sharing my screen here.
No worries.
Thanks, Jess.
No worries. Thank you so much, Yaz. That was fantastic. And I really hope that everybody learned a few tips from there. I certainly did for my kids. So for those of you that haven't met me before or haven't been to one of my webinars, my name's Jess and I'm from Family Zone. And tonight I'm going to talk about the benefits of Family Zone that can provide you to keep your kids safe and on task during this time, but also maybe like save our sanity a little bit during this period. As Yaz spoke about, during this period, we really want to make sure that we give our kids some structure, particularly when there's so much uncertainty in the world at the moment. Kids can really panic not knowing what's coming next, which is really tricky at the moment, isn't it? Because we don't even know what's coming next. So where we can give kids structure to their day is during their day-to-day learning, even at home. So Family Zone can really help make that happen, keeping kids on task and making it easier for us parents too, who, like myself and Yaz, are meant to be working as well as doing a billion other things and suddenly become teachers as well. So apart from keeping kids on task, one of the other major benefits of Family Zone, I'll share my screen. Here we go. Is making sure that we keep them safe as well. So what you're looking at now is the digital journey of our children. You can see here from the first one, right down here, little bitty 4-year-old, they start accessing the internet. So the eSafety Commission reports that 81% of us are giving our preschoolers access to the internet. by age 6, a lot of them have their own device. I know my kids did for the BYOD program at their school. So, but what kind of privacy settings are we putting on those devices as we hand them over? And what sort of protection are we putting on them before we hand them over? I know I read a study the other day, the Raising Children 2018 study, that said 48% of kids between 8 and 12 don't have any privacy settings at all on those devices, which is pretty concerning when you see here they come to 8 years old and they're already, they've already accidentally viewed adult content. Come age 10, come age 10, they get their first mobile phone, and the eSafety Commission report that 10% of kids this age have already been contacted for the purpose of sexual solicitation. So, that's really concerning. And then by age 12, look at the hours that they're spending on time. 52% of us are really concerned about managing screen time. And given these types of hours, I can see why we're really concerned about that. Yeah, so, and then by age 16, they've got tablets and laptops as well. Yeah. So moving right along, some of the next slide that I really like to show at this point is some data that Family Zone has anonymously collected of the usage patterns of these age children. So you can see here on the left-hand side, this is children aged 9 to 12 and their usage patterns. And then on the right-hand side, we've got juniors aged 13 to 15. So you can see here, this is some of the usage patterns during a normal day. All these families have Family Zone in place, thankfully. So, the red ones here, they weren't actually able to access that stuff because they have Family Zone. So what's really concerning is like children 9 to 12, 19% had attempted to access pornography. Now, I don't think for a second that 9 to 12-year-olds are actively trying to access pornography, but it just shows how readily available it is on the internet. And if you don't have a parental control in place, it's not if your children sees this kind of content, it really is when. And as they get older, you can see that these sort of stats are just getting bigger and bigger, maybe as their curiosity expands or their time online expands. But like I said, thankfully for these kids, all their parents had Family Zone in place, so they weren't able to get to some of these dangerous places. So the next slide that we're looking at is just some of the usage during school hours. Now, this is a slide that I usually show when school is, in a normal environment and children are at school, because it just shows how they're using social media during school hours. But I thought I would still include it tonight because it just shows that, 30% of these kids are off task during school hours and on social media. Because we're so mobile, distractions are just huge, aren't they? And the risk that comes with that as well. And being remote can, really increase device use by almost triple. So if they were on social media at school, they're definitely on social media in our homes. So tonight I'll show you, it's just some of the ways Family Zone can help with that and keeping your kids on task and getting their schoolwork done the way you expect them to. So before I go too much further, I just don't want to presume that everybody knows what Family Zone is. Let's just get right back down to the basics and explain what Family Zone is. Family Zone is a cyber safety solution and it protects your kids on the internet no matter what device they're using or what source of internet those devices are using. It can be used at school, at home, or anywhere in between. And it gives you guys as parents the ability to manage those devices and that internet access. Yeah. And how do we do that? How do we know? It's through people like Yasmin that helps us advising Family Zone on things like, you know, how much internet a 10-year-old should have, what should a 10-year-old be able to see on the internet versus what my 17-year-old should be able to see on the internet. We liaise really heavily with the cyber experts because while technology is really important to keep your kids safe online, expertise from people like Yasmin and our other cyber experts is just critical because it's so much more than technology, this cyber safety, isn't it? We need to make sure as parents we're really armed with the right education ourselves and we know how to handle this digital world that we find ourselves in. So some of the things that Family Zone can do, and I will show you through the key benefits tonight that can really help you manage screen time while your kids are at home. So we can help you manage screen time. We also filter the internet, so remove that adult content so that your precious little eyes aren't seeing anything inappropriate. We can help you manage screen time, including streaming apps, and even restrict them from putting apps on that you haven't approved. And that includes that gaming as well that Yaz spoke about. We can really help you manage how much time they're spending on those sorts of things as well. So one of the biggest ways that Family Zone can help you manage screen time, which is important every day, no matter whether we're in isolation, whether we're at school or not, but particularly at the moment because so much is falling onto us parents, it's really important that you can manage your children's screen time. So Family Zone, through the use of our routines and calendars, can help you do exactly that. We can help you set up when your children will have access to the internet, as you can see here, and when they won't have access to the internet. Yeah. You can see here from my daughter's routine. I thought I would pop this one in because while Family Zone gives us the technology to, you know, stop Matilda from being on the internet when I don't want her to be, and also allow her to be on the internet for educational purposes, Family Zone can really assist with that. But what I've done is designed it in correlation with a schedule that we've got for her for, you know, offline as well. So as Yasmin spoke about, structure is just so important during these uncertain times. There we go, Yaz, I said uncertain times as well. Unprecedented times. You can see here from Matilda, one of the ways that we're, you know, creating a bit of security for Matilda is having that structure. Now, all the experts say that we should really mirror what happens in a normal day at school. So, you know, we've gone as far as we've included crunch and sip at 2:05. We've got, you know, recess at the same time, lunch at the same time, and some, you know, some of her lessons at the same time as well. And then with the use of Family Zone, I can mirror that for her technology. So with her routine here, you can see that at 9:20, she has mathletics. So I've given her an hour of screen time, but it's for educational study, which means Matilda can access the internet, but for educational internet only. So I don't have to hover over her, making sure that she hasn't flicked to any social media or any gaming. She will get in and get that educational task done, and I can go away and get some work done. Yeah, and so then I've given her some playtime after that to coincide with her Lego time here. My kids quite often like to go onto YouTube and get some Lego inspiration, which, you know, is fantastic. So the green here represents playtime, so she can go on and do that. And then we've got some recess, and then at 11:20, she's got this Scratch, which is like a coding app that she's been really getting into, which I really encourage. So I've given her some education time here. But as you can see, I haven't overwhelmed her with too much study, and I haven't just let her loose on the internet. I'm really structuring that day, which she was very much involved in. You can see her beautifully designed schedule there. She was very much involved. So she knows how much screen time she has, and she also knows what's expected of her. And, you know, then she can get her playtime in the afternoon. So another way that Family Zone can really assist you to manage screen time during this period, we can help you manage what apps your kids have. So you'll be able to see what apps they have on their devices. They'll also be rated by our lovely cyber experts so that you are informed as parents. And it will also give you little blurbs about, you know, what they're about, so you know what they're all about. And we can also, through our age profile controls, you can go in there and see what your kids have access to. Now, this is where you can see what social networks and gamings they have access to and when they have access to it. You can see here, this is an example of the juniors 13 to 15. So they do have access to the fun things that they want to do, but just during appropriate time of playtime and not when you want them doing their studies during this study time. Also super easy to make quick changes as well, and all time-based as well, as you can see. And like I said, this is also where you control what internet they have access to in terms of the categories. So all the internet is grouped together in categories, and you can come in and scroll through and see what's being blocked and filtered out of your children's internet access and when it is. So as you can imagine, all that adult content that you don't want your children seeing is being filtered out. Like here in this example, the pornography, it's all red, it's all filtered out from your children's internet access. So definitely come in and scroll through and see what your kids have access to. Again, really easy to make a change. If they need to have access to something that you approve, you simply click on it and it'll open up for them. Yeah. So these settings will be set up for you based on our cyber experts' recommendations. But if at any point you as a parent want to override any, it's super easy to do that. And the other thing that you can do is add individual websites. So you can see here, this is actually an example from my 8-year-old's where I've added quite a few websites for him because I don't want to open up a whole category for him, but I do want to give him access to a couple of websites that he needs. So for example, he listens to audiobooks before he goes to sleep at night, and that's categorized as a sales website. And while I don't want to open up the whole category of sales and have him bombarded with that sort of stuff, I do want him to be able to have access to his audiobooks. So you simply add a website, click that and add the website accordingly. So if you do have Family Zone at home and your kids need special access for something they're doing on an assignment, you can simply add it like that, which is really easy. Another way how Family Zone can help you manage the internet. So that's really all I'm going to go over tonight. Because we've got this very special offer tonight, you can come in and follow this link to get Family Zone yourself at home. I'll leave that screen up for a little bit so you have a chance to write down that website there. That will take you to ySafe's linked page so that you can get Family Zone at a little bit of a discount there. And hopefully that will really help you, particularly during this period of remote learning, where it's really important that us as parents can still get all our work done, but don't have to hover over our children while they do their education, and still making sure that they're safe while they're spending so much time online. So as we said at the beginning, we will open up question time. What I might do is stop the recording so that it doesn't go on too long. So for those of you that have got everything that they need out of this session, thank you so much. Like I said, we have recorded it and we will get that out to you. Anyone who registered will get a copy of the recording, but I'll press stop now and we'll open it up for question time. So thanks very much.